We're back, baby. Horns Up, Talking Texas podcast. Fisher Sopos, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. Those listening on ESPN 102.7. Austin, what up? Happy weekend. Happy off season. The news never stops. Rumblings of our head coach maybe moving on to greener pastures. Jerry Jones giving him the call. Will he go to the Dallas Cowboys? Not so fast. Sark extended through 2031. Another 6 years under Coach Sark. Obviously, he's flipped this program around. Back-to-back Final Four appearances in the college football playoff, the only coach to do it. Gave the national champs, I would say, their toughest game through and through, whistle to whistle. Notre Dame obviously made it pretty interesting at the end, but Ohio State was really in control for most of that game until Marcus Freeman and those boys came rumbling back a little bit. But whistle to whistle, first quarter to the end of the fourth, Sark gave Ohio State their toughest test, the national champions. Hats off to them. We see them week 1 in Columbus next year. Reminds you a bit about something from we had this year? I don't know. You tell me. When we saw the Michigan Wolverines to start the season, or sorry, second game of the season in Ann Arbor. Gents, reactions to Sark, happy, relieved, not surprised at all. How are we feeling about this extension?
Well, I hope that has that same result as the Michigan game before I get into this, but I do think that this Ohio State team will be a little bit more competitive than Michigan was this year post-championship. It just seems like, a lot of their underclassmen played really well. Jeremiah Smith obviously leading the charge there. And then whoever they end up rolling out at quarterback, after Will Howard is done, is probably going to be a better option than Warren Davis or Alex Orji. So it's going to be definitely a bigger test, and you really can't count them out ever, but that'll be a really fun game. I'm excited about Sark. Obviously, I mean, that's such great news for Longhorn Nation to get as the offseason approaches. I thought it was such blasphemy when I would see reports that he's considering NFL jobs. I don't know why you would do that, because if you're considering an NFL job, you're replacing a coach that just got fired. So you're going to a situation where you have to rebuild, where you have to restart, where you have to take a team that was worst and try to get them to first. When you literally have a program that, like you said, back-to-back semifinals, that finished number 4 in the nation, that will probably be preseason top 3 in the nation, maybe even top 2, and maybe not 2. And you've got Arch Manning. Like, yes, he's there for a year, but you're really going to leave right when Arch Manning takes the keys to the kingdom and takes over and, is the Heisman favorite and might be on the cover of College Football 26. Like, too many things at play. Like, you need to see this through. And then just for years to come too, continuing to build the recruiting classes. This isn't going to be the last time we're going to get a Arch Manning type caliber prospect and recruit. It's coming every single season. We just finished with the number 1 overall recruiting class in all of college football. That's hasn't been done in a long time. And it was the smallest margin according to Rivals, from 1 to 2 between us and Georgia. But regardless, we're here for the number 1 spot. And, that's something that Sark would not pass up to go to just a crappy NFL job for, a couple of years. We've seen that song and dance before, and he's too smart and he's making too much money. I mean, there's no one that's going to pay him in the NFL like he's getting paid right now.
Yeah, I think the extension last offseason bumped him up, almost doubled his salary. The reports on what the actual number for his yearly annual salary, now including this additional extension, I don't believe have come out yet, but he's going to be making more than 10.3 million, which is what he was making per year. So
yeah,
I think you're right on the money there, Nick, with why the financial implications and everything else you said, I think sums it up perfectly. He has built this program back to what we know it's capable of being, alongside Quinn Ewers quarterbacking this team phenomenally for the last 2 seasons. But he's also been one of the only coaches in college to have consistency from a coordinator standpoint. And PK's not going anywhere, in my opinion. I think he'll still be with us. But at least going into this past season, like, everything indicated that this is a guy who's building his dynasty, his franchise at the college level. And it's something that he wants to do and then succeed with. So until he gets to the mountaintop, I don't think he'll consider going to the NFL. I mean, look, the Dallas Cowboys, it's an awesome job for any potential coach who wants to move to the NFL, for any coach who's an OC or a DC right now. We know the legacy of that franchise. but it's also a really, really challenging place to be. And he would have to completely rewrite the narrative of what that franchise has been for the last, really since they were in the 90s when they were actually winning with Jimmy Johnson. Yeah. So he's in a great spot. Again, like you mentioned, Nick, like if you're going to leave, why don't you leave after Arch Manning, after you get to coach a guy who's supposed to be a premier talent, could end up being the first overall pick after, if he has a really successful season as the quarterback for the Texas Longhorns, and obviously just a guy that understands the game well. From a branding standpoint, you really can't beat that. You know, we've never seen a backup quarterback as famous as Arch Manning. And now he gets to be the starter, which is really, really exciting. Sure, we're losing pieces on the offensive side of the football to the draft, but we're replenishing a lot of that with recruits that we're bringing in, guys that will, get older and develop in this offseason, hopefully, and be bona fide starters this upcoming season. And then outside of that, it's like, you have the opportunity as a 50-year-old head coach to really try and do something with this Texas Longhorns program while still having the year runway of then going to the NFL after that, if you want to. So there's no reason to get ahead of himself. Not to mention, he has proven to be an incredibly loyal guy and appreciative guy to this situation that he's currently in. And I think if anyone knows anything about Steve Sarkisian as a man and his own personal journey, like gratitude's really important to him. Buy-in is really important to him. Relationships are really important to him. So for him to just up and leave on this Texas football program feels completely out of character. And I think more so the reports were NFL franchises are interested in Sark. And why wouldn't you be, given what he's done bringing this Texas football program back? So I'm glad he's still with us. There's going to be other coaches, though, that are, over the course of the next 2 months, considering other positions. The Dallas Cowboys are looking at both Tashard Choice and DeMarco Murray for the running back room coach for their team. So, TC has been a guy that's gotten a lot of love for the last 2 off seasons, and what he's been able to consistently do with running backs, getting them to the draft, and obviously having productive seasons as Longhorns. Look what he did with Trey Wisner this past season, who we thought was really supposed to be our 3rd string, maybe even 4th string. And then all of a sudden in that Texas A&M game, he's running for 170 yards or whatever it ended up being, and really putting his name on the map. So those will be interesting things to kind of look at as we progress through the offseason. But I feel really comfortable and really excited about what's to come for the next couple of months up to draft for all these guys who are, on big boards. I think we have, per ESPN, 8 guys that are in the top 100 on their big board. And it can be less than that, it can be more than that, depending on what site you're looking at. So this is going to be a fun few next couple of months.
When you're going from the college to the pros as a player, you're getting a paycheck. Obviously you get a paycheck in college now too with NIL, but you are going to have a career. Like, this is a full-time job. The thing is, you're going from a coach in college to a coach in the NFL. It's still a job. It's still professional. You're still making money. And depending on who you are, you stick in your lane. Nick Saban stick in his lane. He tried the NFL for a little bit, did not work out. Like Krzyzewski didn't ever make that jump. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, like, the idea that people have in their mind where it's like, well, why wouldn't he go to the NFL? It's a better opportunity. Is it really a better opportunity? At the end of the day, like, they're making just as much money as maybe sometimes more money, like in this situation with Sark. And it's a completely different ball game. Like, you're in the NFL and you're, managing games, and you don't have to deal with recruiting. You have to deal with players. You have to deal with, ownership. You have to deal with fan bases. Like, it's a different beast. I think Sark actually really enjoys the recruiting aspect of things, getting personal with the players, with the families, molding these guys into men. I think he's a college coach. I don't necessarily know if I see him making the jump to the NFL. Maybe in a few, 10, 20 years down the road, who knows, things can change if you want that challenge, but I don't think it's anything to do with his legacy or to add to his resume. At the end of the day, like, no one's slighting Nick Saban for not having success in the NFL. And so I think, if anything, it's just a challenge that you want to put out for yourself. Hey, I want to try out the NFL to see if I can do this as well. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Also at the end of the day, like the old Black Mamba verbiage, job's not done.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. And there has to be something to go for that. We talked about, on our sister show, Stripe Sports, Ben Johnson and his mindset potentially with the Detroit Lions. And he had a bunch of coaching opportunities last year. And I'm sure there was a small part of him that's like, look, I got so close to the Lions last year. We went to the NFC Championship game. This team hasn't seen that kind of glory ever. You know, they've been the laughing stock of the NFL for God knows how long. I have a great thing going here. Why not continue to run my luck and see if I can get it done with the Detroit Lions and be your hero here? And like, look, the guy who wins in Texas is the guy who's at the top of the mountain automatically in college football. It's just the way the program is and just like, you know, the legacy of Texas football. And I guess similar to the Cowboys, like, while we're the big name brand, we haven't had that real success since Mac Brown and Vince Young did it, you know, almost now 20 years ago. So it's been a couple decades since we last won the whole shebang and we're the top team. So I'm sure there's a part of Sark that came to do that at this job. And so there's no reason to leave, especially when you have so much, not even just with Arch Manning. Yes, you lose some offensive linemen and some receivers, but you have a bunch of great receivers still on the roster and Moore and Wingo. You still have your two best defensive players, arguably, in Hill and Simmons. LaFau is back. Tapp is back. McDonald's back. Gilbo's back. Like, there's a lot of real good talent, plus all that top-tier recruiting classes you've had now back-to-back and now this year again. And your running back room gets a lot stronger with C.J. Baxter's return. Now you have him, Wisner, and Jarrett Gibson, who's coming in as a sophomore, and I'm hoping can make a big jump as our goal line guy. So there's a lot to do for Sark still at Texas. And yes, the Cowboys job is enticing, but outside of that, like, what are you going to leave Texas to go to Jacksonville? It sounds like a mess.
Yeah. No, hell
I mean,
no.
Urban Meyer made the jump, didn't work. Matt Rule made the jump, didn't work. I mean, there's a reason why guys like Matt Campbell stay at Iowa State and don't make the jump to even bigger programs, let alone the NFL, when he does get looks. So, and eventually teams stop calling. I think that Sark has so much left to do here at Texas. And obviously him being loyal is one thing, but, you know, for what he wants to accomplish as a head coach, and he's always been in the college ranks. He's been a head coach at multiple universities now, and he's never been able to get it done and win that championship. And now he's come close back-to-back years. And I'm saying, like, we were on the final play for that Washington game to go to the national championship game. We were at the goal line, first and goal to tie the game against Ohio State. You know, the score doesn't lend itself to what actually happened in that game.
Yeah.
So
if you're want to get the monkey off his back,
100%. Like if you're Sark like that, I'm not even thinking about the NFL. The extension's great. I know I have that security and they lock me in and they force me to stay. You know, they force the hand a little bit and be like, look, we know you want to stay here. We're giving you the money. You stay here and you get the job done. Now, does he still live out the entire extension? You know, if he wins multiple national championships, on one hand, yes, you're the king of the castle, you're Krzyzewski type deal, not obviously like his success or Saban, but like you're on that path like Kirby Smart, and there's no need and reason to leave. It's your city, it's your team. And then on the other hand, like, you know, if you win a couple national championships, thanks for what you've done. You did what people couldn't do here for the longest time or even ever, really, quite frankly. And then you can go to the NFL, but he's not even close to that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, winning changes things a lot, obviously. I mean, we look at Harbaugh. He won his natty, and then he went to the NFL. Mind you, he had some issues that were swirling in college football with sanctions and with just, you know, things that were he probably just wanted to get away from, you know. But ultimately, if you win that one championship, then your mindset changes a little bit, because in Texas history, only two coaches have won it all, right? Mac Brown and Darrell Royal. So, you know, you win a natty for Texas, you cement yourself. You get your name in the stadium. Like, maybe they name a few things after you. Like, that's just how it is, right? Like, that doesn't really happen in the NFL. Like, you know, Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl with the Colts, but it's like, sure, he was a great coach for them, but like, is he really, you know, immortalized, you know, in that franchise history? You know, it's just kind of, but I don't know. If I don't necessarily see.
I think he's immortal. I think he's immortalized, but I think what you're saying, the pedigree of winning at the collegiate level and the immortalization that goes there, I think is a bit different. Yes.
Well, not to mention, I think,
unless you're Bill,
we talk about how situational it is for quarterbacks when they get drafted to a particular franchise. And if they're dealt, for lack of a better term, a shit hand, like, it becomes really challenging for them to reach their potential, especially if they're a top 10 pick. It's situational for coaches too. I mean, Harbaugh goes to Los Angeles. They had a lot of pieces on the defense. They had Justin Herbert, who is deemed by most, at minimum, a top 7 talent from the quarterback position in the NFL. If you're going to Dallas, you have Dak Prescott, locked into a massive contract, who's a guy that a lot of people think the Cowboys can win with, but not win because. There's a ton of question marks around Trevor Lawrence. Ben Johnson took a job with the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams, a guy who's a first overall pick and still so early in his NFL career where he thinks he can probably get a lot out of him. Some of those things are out of your control if you're just being slotted in as a new head coach for a franchise. You don't have 3 years of the draft that you've worked on like Sark has done in building this program from a recruiting standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. He has built the culture here. He has earned the trust of Texas fans, the Texas football program, and every other person in between. He would have to start from scratch if he's going to one of these teams, or if he's going to the Raiders. It's like, who's your quarterback?
Well, that's the thing. There's a reason. There's a reason. There's no one jumping at the Jacksonville or Vegas. No one's jumping to throw their name into the ring for the Jacksonville or Vegas job at all.
Right.
Like, yes, the Cowboys job is more enticing, but it's not like it is the Chargers job that's available. Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. You're back in LA. You have, good cap to play with and a good team around you.
You have Rashawn Slater. You
draft
Joe. You have a top 6 pick, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not the same.
Not even close the same thing. So there's no job really that's even close to, in my opinion, is enticing. And yes, the Cowboys name brand, but you have Jerry Jones. You don't have a lot of cap room to play with. And you do have to move some pieces around, and there's just not as enticing. As just being the head coach of the Texas Longhorns and pushing the shoves.
You also have to consider legacy too. Like, obviously the Bears and the Cowboys are in a tier of their own when it comes to just like legacy of coaching. And I think even the Raiders too, just like having Jacksonville is not one of those where it's like, I get to play for the historic franchise of Jacksonville and Shed Khan. It's like, that's not.
No, the guy that goes to Jacksonville is bringing winning culture to Jacksonville really for the first time. I know they went to the AFC Championship, but it was not sustained, right? Like this, that's why it's such a hefty endeavor, because like we haven't seen it in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
It's a younger franchise. I get that, but like still really challenging. The one thing I'll say about, like, there's been a progression. We get to the semifinal last year. We lose. We get to the semifinal again, but we had to go through the 12-team playoff this go around. Like, that's way more challenging than what we had to do last year. We were also playing in the Big 12 last year. I would argue that even though this was a quote-unquote down year for the SEC, week to week, it is still a more challenging task to play those teams who have been
winning. Played Georgia twice.
Right. We had to play Georgia twice. Sure, we lost in the SEC championship. We won the Big 12 championship the year before, but I would say this was still progression. And look, he wants to cement his legacy as a coach in general, period. And he needs to win more games, and he needs to win bigger games, more playoff games. He's 2-3 in the college football playoffs, Sark's record right now. But Ryan Day is 70-10 at Ohio State. He's the most winning coach that's actively coaching in college football right now. And he just got a ring. This guy, I know there's Michigan issues, but what this guy is doing is legacy stuff from the coaching standpoint. 70-10, that's absurd. Like, it's really, really ridiculous. So I would argue it's like you got Kirby, who's won. You got Ryan Day. You got Marcus Freeman, who just got there, who has now turned this Notre Dame program around, and we know what kind of legacy they have.
Yeah.
And so this is a good class of coaches to be competing with. And Sark's a competitor too. Like, he wants to win. He wants to be the best. He wants his guys to be the best and to get the best out of them. And I think it's just a perfect fit, and he just needs to keep pushing, and we need to go get that national championship, because it's going to mean a ton for him, for the program, for everyone involved, and for the legacy of what he means as a college football coach and a coach in football, period. And he's a guy that everyone recognizes as one of the most talented offensive minds, but he's also a guy that, this was the first time, this was an interesting national championship because Chip Kelly was the OC for Ohio State. That's a guy who is a great coach, a great
went to the national championship
and got far in the playoffs in the NFL too, but never could get over the mountaintop. And he had to take an OC position. So if you're Sark, like, don't throw away an opportunity where in the next 5 years, it's feasible to win a national championship, or at least put yourself in a position to compete for one.
You're the favorite.
And become like Chip Kelly, where you have to, I'm not like, what Chip Kelly was instrumental in Ohio State winning, but it took him a long time to get there to a place where he could win as a coach.
Hey, well, even like inversely, not a guy like Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator to take that, that stress and burden away from Sark for calling the plays. I mean, there's no shame in that. Obviously, you want the ring, get the ring, right? Ryan Day just did it, but Chip Kelly is also one of the most recognizable coaching names in college football. Like, there's that there's only so many of him out there. The last thing I will say about this all is that there's also other measures of success as a college coach rather than just winning a natty. Like in the NFL, the only thing that matters is winning a Super Bowl and winning. But if you're a college coach, right, there's so many organizations and universities that know they're not going to the national championship and winning it all. However, there are still guys that have been tenured there for 10, 20 years, right? That just, you look at Kansas State, like you look at, obviously the legacy that was left behind at Penn State. I mean, Paterno won some, but still, like, he was there forever, and ultimately they know they're not going to win every single year. But the other measures for success are how many guys are you putting through the league, right? Like how many conference championships are you winning? Like what's your record in rivalry games? Like those things matter way more to universities than they would to NFL teams. Like, sure, it's great to have divisional titles, but like there's 4 teams in your division, right? Ultimately, what matters is if you sneak in as a wild card team and win the Super Bowl, like the Giants did twice, like that's what matters more.
Give me that over a division title any day of the week.
Exactly. But in college, it's like you win the SEC, you win the Big 12, like that's big time. You win a big bowl game, that's big. You have a number 1 recruiting class, that's big. You put 12 players in the NFL draft this year, that's huge. Like those are things that are. You have the Outland winner, you have the Thorpe winner, you've had a Doak Walker winner, you've had a guy that's been to the Heisman ceremony. Like those are all things that you cement to your own personal legacy as a college coach that you don't get in the NFL.
You have back-to-back Outland winners, and and the thing is, you're right, it's different for every program. Like I use Matt Rule as an example. Matt Rule's at Baylor, and I'm not saying Baylor was incapable of getting to the college football playoffs. They're definitely a university at several points that was in that mix. But their ceiling's a bit different. Texas's ceiling is the roof. You know what I'm saying? Texas's floor is the roof. Sorry, I misquoted that. Texas's floor is the roof. So like, the sky's the limit for what you can do at the University of Texas. And it took Ryan Day a little bit, and it took a guy, and like, look, yeah, there is no shame. And it has to be the right guy to come in to call offensive plays for Sark. It can't just be, anybody. Like a guy like Chip Kelly, and before that, it was supposed to be Bill O'Brien before he took the job at Boston College to be their head coach. He was slated to be the OC there at Ohio State. So, that will take a special person to come in. But if you're Sark, there's no point in leaving. You have what you got going on, and you still have to get over that final hump. But you've accomplished so much already, and you have a great resume. But because you are the University of Texas and not a Kansas State, the expectations and the ceiling and the potential is a lot higher for what you have to do to be deemed a success as the head coach of the University of Texas and in the maximum level. He's already a success, but I'm talking in that ilk of the top tier guys like Mac Brown. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Favorite moments of the year as we wrap up. Season's done. Nick, this is your idea for a segment, so we'll start with you. What was your favorite moment of the year? Toss, then I'll close it out.
I've got a couple. I'll start with a smaller one. Watching Arch take that read option to the house, when he came in for Quinn after getting hurt, was awesome, unreal. That's just like the Arch Manning has arrived moment where the stadium goes nuts, and we actually have that hope that like legitimately he's going to be as good as he's been advertised. Obviously, he only started a couple of games for us this season, and I'm glad that he got that experience under his belt, but I'm happy for all of those experiences where he was able to, get that experience and be able to get a connection with some of his guys and kind of give us a taste of what we have next season. And then, this is always going to stick with me, but, I think maybe it's probably the same for you guys, but it's a little different being from Texas and having so many friends that went to A&M and being in A&M group chats, but beating them on their turf. That felt so good, just shutting up the A&M fans that thought that they had a chance against us and honestly blanking them for the whole game. Like they only score 7 points because Quinn throws that interception. It's a pick six, right? Like that this should have been a 24-0 game at least.
Yeah. To me, I'll just piggyback because I want to echo that sentiment. Winning, it's our first year in the SEC. We have old rivalries that get resurged in Arkansas and A&M, not to mention we're going to the SEC along with our all-time rival Oklahoma. And we win all 3 of those games this year handily. And the cherry on top being the dominant performance on the road in a tough place to play at Kyle Field, and really demonstrating that domination in a way that in the Sark era and the prior eras, up until like the teams that Quan were on, we don't win like that, really. I mean, I know we only scored 17 points, but we ran the ball 33 times. And Wisner, I said 170 yards earlier. That was just my throwing out. It was 186, so I didn't want to slight Trey there. But he was a dominant force on the ground, and we absolutely big boyed them. We won the line of scrimmage, and we ran the ball down their throats. And that's when like you finish watching a game like that, and you're like, we were just better than them. And we've won a lot of important games, and I've felt that we've been better than a lot of teams. But that one was an unknown going into that game because they were really hot. They were playing really, really well. I think A&M fans who were practical about it knew that they weren't as good and didn't have the personnel to match up against us. But that was really, really impressive that in year 1 in a new conference, we beat all 3 of our arch rivals, really. And not to mention, I mean, I know this is a moment, I guess, or 2 moments, 2 games here that didn't go our way. But I love that we played Georgia twice this year. I love that we have this new budding rivalry with them. I love that it's Smart and Sark, both under the tutelage of Nick Saban, right? And now having to play each other, hopefully year in, year out, and at the top of this SEC conference. So we didn't get them this year, and we had 2 opportunities, and we really could have in that second one, and we should have. But I think that'll keep us hungry, and I like that that's a new thing, right? And I like that we get to play Alabama, and I like that we get to play LSU. Who knows what the actual history of those games will present to us in the next 5 years? But I already know that like there's contention between Texas fans and Georgia fans, and that gets me pumped up. That's one of the best programs in college football for the last 10 years. I love that that's our rival. That's what makes college football fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, the best moment, obviously I'm aligned with you guys, the Georgia stuff that, coming into the phrase, exciting. The A&M one was insane, especially so many 4th down stops that we had on defense. Like you're saying, Toss, like taking care of business against our rivals, also on the road in Fayetteville against Arkansas and winning on the road there, which we hadn't done in our last meeting under Sark. We got demolished last time we went there. So to come back and win that game was really great. And obviously against OU, we smacked them around again, which is awesome to see after losing to them last year. Personally, getting to see our team play live against the national champions, at the time, the reigning national champions. Yes, they weren't the same team, but they still were good. And they still had really good defensive players on the team that are guys that are going to go in the top 10 of the NFL draft. They still beat Ohio State this year, who were the eventual national champions on the road. So getting to go to Ann Arbor and watching our team just absolutely dismantle this Michigan team and suck the life out of that stadium, for me personally, that was just like an all-time moment to be there and be like, you know what, this team is going to go far this year. We're ready to go. We're ready to be in the big room. And, we're ready to really put our stamp on college football and be one of the top tier teams. And we just took down the defending national champs on the road with no questions asked. So for me, that was the icing on the cake early on for the season, barring things were a disaster and the cake didn't go spoil. But yeah, the Quinn, 4th and 15 play, like we're talking scenario plays, like that's like, come on, like that was, everything you wanted for obviously us to stay in the game and move on to the next round. But that's everything you want for a guy like Quinn, who's just gone under so much fire the entire season and his entire collegiate career at Texas. I mean, he's been so polarizing in the national media, and for him to have that moment where he stays calm, cool, collected in the pocket, like we've been saying about that play, read the defense, make the adjustment, and hit Matthew Golden on a beautiful ball for a touchdown to tie the game, and then hit Gunnar Helm on the next play to take the lead. Like, that's everything you want for this squad.
I think it changed the narrative of how it's one of the elements of the narrative changing around how Quinn's going to be talked about up until the NFL draft. And I think if that doesn't happen and he's not able to make that play, it's completely different for him. And
yeah,
so I'm proud of him for making that play. Cause like people deserve to talk about him in the way that he's now being talked about and appreciated. And I know that, he had that, Jack Sawyer got to him, but like there was nothing he could do on that play. You know, like that's not his fault. He played pretty solidly. I mean, again, like that pitch to Wisner where his knee's about to be down against Ohio State, like that was an unbelievable play. Like maybe the best play I've ever seen him make as far as just like improving in the moment. Oh, this is the only thing I can do. I have to keep my team in this. And he made the exact play that he had to make. I would also just say this isn't like a particular play, but the way that Makuba and Barron and Taff talked about playing for the Texas Longhorns, talked about being local to the area and how much it meant to them to play for this team was one of the coolest things that I witnessed this entire season.
I was going to say that too. Just like the camaraderie they had for each other as well. Like when, Jade won the Thorpe Award and, they're in the back right there, like supporting him. And even when, Taft decides to stay, like they're saying that he should wear number 7 and they're, giving him all the praise. The whole team is, just saying what a great leader he is and how excited they are for him to continue to play. I think that group for sure, like really said something about the culture of our team, that, they take pride in being from Austin, from one, but 2, they take pride in being brothers and teammates. They love each other. And, we're talking about Makuba, who's the guy that's only there for 1 season. Like it only took 1 season for them to really adjust and bond like that. And if you would have asked me, like it looked like they'd been together for 4 years.
Yeah. 100%. Like these. Yeah. I mean, Makuba stepped right in and had, again, like you talked about the end of that Arizona State game, he had the game sealing interception, like multiple big plays, multiple close calls on hits, where it's like they pick the flag up and like, nah, this guy's just a thumper. But yeah, I mean, the camaraderie built, like, we talked about last show with Quan, like a guy like Derek Johnson, who wanted to help build that culture. And you're right, Toss, like Makuba, Barron, Taft, like that camaraderie in a nutshell just shows where our culture is at and the places that we're going. So fantastic season. So much to build on. We're the favorites going into next year, betting wise, which is exciting. And I think it's fair. I mean, look, we're going to see a tough test against Ohio State. We said at the top of the show, they are returning guys. Their quarterback that's coming in is Julian Sain, one of the top recruits, from his class. And I'm sure that he's going to be able to command that offense. It's a really fun, exciting offense. He's going to be able to sling it. So it's going to be a really tough test, but we're as prepared as anybody. And before I let everybody go, I got to remind you guys that we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code STRIPE. That's capital STRIPE. Get a free pick and up to $1,000 bonus cash. Play along. Give us your picks. Send us your picks. Big weekend coming up in football. A lot of fun fantasy stuff you can do there with the DFS. So go to Underdog Fantasy. Use the code STRIPE, STRIPE, all caps.
Who do we have in this game that are former, or in these 2 conference championship games that are former Longhorns?
Chuck.
Worthy, obviously, for the Chiefs.
Cosme
for
he's hurt though
for the Commanders, but still on the team, and it's been an important part of what that offensive line has been able to do. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think that's it. I think a lot of our dudes are in Denver.
So many dudes in Denver
and in Carolina too. And Jonathan Brooks underwent his surgery and he'll likely miss 2025. All of 2025 is what reports are saying, but the surgery was a success. So hopefully he can get back in 2026. We know how special that guy can be, and we want to see him play NFL ball for sure.
That was awful.
Yeah.
I love Jonathan Brooks. That's gut wrenching, but yeah, some pros playing. Chuck Ameni, who's been on the show, X obviously, who's really come on strong. And then Cosme, who unfortunately also got injured, last game, but been a vital part of that, the Commanders' offensive line that was Swiss cheese pretty much up into this year. Yeah. So he's had a really nice run in the pros.
Just quickly from the 2 of y'all, way too early guy that you're most excited about next season besides Arch Manning? Like
Colin Simmons.
Okay.
Colin Simmons. I mean,
give me a deeper cut. Give me he's my guy. Like, I can't wait for this guy
to. It's so hard not to say him because it's like he was so dominant as a freshman. Like, what's he gonna do as a sophomore? Like, I mean, same with Anthony Hill. Deeper cut. I'm excited to see what Jelani McDonald can do being a full-time starter at the safety position. After we just talked about how our DBs played and that camaraderie, like having a new guy, fresh blood to continue to cement the DBU and take that name back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they slot with D. Will coming back, having Jelani and Taff. Is one of them going to, because Thorpe earlier in his career really was a safety who kind of transitioned into DB. He could play all over the field at that position, but which one of those guys will kind of take, like, will Taft play a little more DB? Will he stay at safety? Like, I'm interested to see how they play that.
Well, he probably play one at nickel, like, and move Gilbo over to like an actual corner spot because he's been our nickel guy, and that's a guy I'm really excited about because he's one of our top tacklers, and I think he's continuing to progress. And obviously, Leona Lafau, who's been my guy all year, I'm sticking with him, and I think that he's in for a big junior year.
And then on offense, I'm excited to see Jamie French come in as a freshman.
For French.
I'm excited to see Baxter come back. I mean, that's an obvious one. And then Brandon Baker, I think he's a guy that can kind of take out that name again and be the top tackle, for the Texas Longhorns and kind of take over for Banks. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't mention this earlier on the show, but I know, like, college football national media, I guess, or people that are talking about the recruiting portal, the transfer portal and recruits nonstop, always make a bigger deal out of the transfers than the actual schools themselves. Amari Niblack, is going to Texas A&M, which clears the way. And I think a part of the reason why he's going is because this guy had already cleared the way, Jordan Washington, who I think is going to be an absolute stud at the tight end position. I'm excited to see what he can do. I think he's just a playmaker. I think he's going to, there's already a lot of hype about him from what his talent looks like. He obviously didn't get a ton of opportunity in his freshman year this past season, but that's what we talked about maybe last year or 2 shows ago. And Brandon Baker's a great call. It's like, it's a 5-star recruit. Like, he's supposed to be a stud. Just let him learn behind guys like Banks, and then eventually he'll get his opportunity, and you just got to make the most of it. But I mean, what? Kyle Flood's not going to coach him up and make him make the most of it? No, he will, and he has. He's proven that. So I'm
Gooseby too. I think both we could. I think
we're not even talking about Gooseby because it's like it's a lock that guy's just a stud. Like, he's just really good. We've already seen it, right?
And lastly, we've spoken about Arch a lot. Like, Arch's deep ball and gunslinging vibes. We know what Wingo is. But one of the guys that showed so many amazing spurts and such great breakaway speed and big playability is DeAndre Moore. And I think he's the guy that takes a massive
drops. If you can limit the drops.
The drops, he's going to be excellent. And I think him and Arch can have that connection. And I think that's going to be something that we see and something defenses fear in the SEC for next season. So
well, he'll still have Wingo's going to be our quote unquote wide receiver 1, right? He's going to be on the outside. He's going to be taking predominantly the number 1 defensive back assignment. So it's going to open a lot of things up for Moore in the slot to do a ton of damage. But I said it, when we were going into each of the playoff games, like, we're starting to have to force the ball to Wingo because he's that talented, and he's going to continue proving that. I think he can be on that Ryan Williams level. Jeremiah Smith right now is in a class of his own, but I would love for the conversation to be like, these 3 sophomore wide receivers are top of the top. And once they're draft eligible, like, they're all 3 going to go in the top 15. And I think Wingo has a skill set. He's got the speed. He's got the size. He's got the hands. He can do it after the catch. Like, he just needs to get the opportunities. And I think he's going to get that this upcoming season.
No doubt.
Love it, boys. All right. Hook 'em horns. Those listening on ESPN 102.7. We'll see you guys later, or we'll see you another time. We out ya. We love ya.
Hook 'em.